think some people think it's the solution.
No.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the Convo Couch, everyone. Pasta Jardula
they
here.
do think that.
Buy
I wouldn't put all
Bitcoin.
my bets
Bitcoin.
in a system that's still capitalism. I'm sorry.
Well, Can you please introduce Johnny Sue on the ones
No.
and twos? And there's
you
Johnny Sue.
You don't tell me
on
what to
the
do.
Ones and twos. Why do I have to do it?
You like to do it.
No, this is ageism. It's like, don't tell me what to do, but she tells me what to do all the time.
I do not.
Yes, you do.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
Oh, God.
Michael, you're calling in the middle of a show. We love you, Ungie.
Well, he doesn't expect you to be live this early.
I know, right? I doesn't even expect me to be up. We're talking about the Islanders. Probably they lost last night. Poor Barzy. Had a tough game.
He's an Islanders fan?
No, not at all.
Oh.
But he's all in for the Islanders this year. Let's put it that way. Let's get over to your subject. We have a long show.
We really don't have a long show because we have to go. So
yes, we have a short show and a long amount of time. Wait, a long show in a short amount of time. We have to get on out of here. We have an event we're going to cover, and that's going to be exciting with fam. We kind of put this off the other day. This is a very important thing. You're going to be educating me here as well, so I'm very excited.
You're supposed to read it, fam.
Fam, I was working on 2 other stories, and confession, I only watched 3.5 hours of the 5.5 hour hearing on the Wall Street bets, and guess how much of it was valuable? That much of it. It was just a bunch of blowhards, airhard, just bleh, crap, yelling into the air, bullshit and stuff. You know, a couple good clips here.
Yeah.
That's it. And also Maricopa County, I had to cover that too as well. So you have to educate me here this morning on this, Bill, because you're the one who can read like 9,000 pages in just like 2 seconds.
That's not true, but okay.
But you're a very good reader and you know it. See, fams. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining the Rokfin, Rokfin. It's a great time to be getting into crypto right now.
Yeah,
and the Rokfin allows you to do that because it has the Ray token, which is connected to the Ethereum network, and we need your help over there. One thing important that we both agree on is they don't censor our voice. Right, fam? Okay.
Yeah.
Right, fam?
I can't talk. Can I talk? Yeah, like... I'm okay. I'm good with the crypto. I was just telling them that it's not the solution, and I think some people think it is. It's still capitalism. This is why I'm not a capitalist, because you still have a lot of rich people that can buy all this Bitcoin compared to the little guy. Yes, it's diversified more, but it's still, at the end of the day, you're going to have rich people come in, take it over, and the same problems are going to continue. So that's what I was saying. And I think some people, maybe not you guys, but some people think this is going to save them. I don't think it is. So
yes.
There we go.
It's not going to be the same problems. It's going to be different problems, whatnot. It's a kind of transparent monetary system. And the good thing about it right now, it's more younger people are into cryptos and buying that, whatnot. So all these people that are coming in very late to the game, they're just going to inflate the price for those people down below. So the chances to get into it right now, because people like my mom and her friends and her investors, the people of like just regular retail investors, are not getting involved with cryptos yet. They're still way behind. So the majority of people who have all those stocks and that money, the non-hedge funds, the non-1%ers, they're not into it. So this is our opportunity to get in there and swing it our way. Is it the final solution? No. But it's definitely right now, definitely the next solution. So get a chance if you can. Get yourself a Coinbase wallet. Tell them Pasta and Fee sent you and Johnny from the Convo Couch. Get into cryptos and have some fun. But
it's still
not
capitalism.
The final solution. Oh, it's still capitalism. Pointing that out.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Let's get into this because this is going to be interesting as can be.
So the Democrats are pushing this legislation, and by Democrats I mean like establishment Democrats to all the way to like the squad, everybody, right? They're pushing all of this, and it's basically this. It's called the For the People Act. It's HR 1, but it's not all rainbow. So Mother Jones is like the liberal go-to. Like, I don't even know what to call it. It's not even news. It's just like liberal go-to publication. And they're calling Trump's election claims, election fraud, the big lie, which is ironic as all hell. But Trump's lawyers won't renounce the big lie, and neither will the GOP. Well, what happened is that they're focusing on the fact that Trump's legal team, the lawyer who had that whole outburst with the mainstream media gal, they're saying that they're not admitting to lying about election fraud. And his lawyer said there was nothing improper about Trump's call because Trump was simply inquiring into voting irregularities, including the inexplicable drop in mail ballots rejected for signature errors in 2020 compared to 2018. And that is true. But they're saying his assertion was false, blah, 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 the signatures, and the claim, while easily contradicted, according to them, was revealing. It shows Trump's legal team sticking by the big lie, the false assertion that a legitimate victory was stolen from Trump, a lie that gave birth to the insurrection at the Capitol. You see how they're tying any sort of questioning with elections to the insurrection at the Capitol. And basically, Sanders, I wanted to point this out because Bernie Sanders is now officially a cuck of the Democratic establishment, because this is what he said during Friday's question and answer session when Sanders was asked if Trump's team if Joe Biden had won the election. Trump's lawyer, Michael Van Der Veen, refused to say, calling the issue irrelevant, and Sanders said, no, it isn't.
Can I do that?
Yeah.
No, it isn't. Go ahead. Sanders shouted back, you represent the president of the United States.
Neither Trump or his legal team would renounce the big lie, nor will the vast majority of the Senate Republicans who are ready to acquit Trump, nor will the state-level Republicans who continue to amplify his false claims, right? Okay, so because of all of this is happening, you can scroll to the bottom, Johnny, and it basically says they did not have the 67 votes to convict Trump, but they do have the votes to pass 2 pieces of federal legislation that would protect and expand the right to vote. This is the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and the For the People Act. And that is what they're focused on. They're also calling to eliminate the filibuster, which I'm not against. But this For the People Act just came out of nowhere, right?
Well, I don't want to say it came out of nowhere because I know you're going to get into this.
No, it didn't really.
Because it was the stuff they were trying, a lot of the stuff they were trying to get in the HEROES Act. And I just want to make one statement real quick, fam, about the whole signature thing that they pointed out. That's something that people really have to get their brains around, because the most errors and most rejection of mail-in ballots come for first-time users. Because they always forget something, they're not used to doing it, they don't sign it right, and it gets sent back. Those numbers went down, they should have gone up. So that's the thing he's clinging to more than anything with the mail-in ballots, what it said in that first sentence, fam. Just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, but if you're viewing it from, well, that's good that it didn't go down because we want more people to vote. How do you like say like, no, we should have more people that aren't verified and push, because that is a pushback, like that you have to be ready to say, no, it's not that I don't want more people to vote, it's that I want more security. More
security. We're going to always have to point that out, and those people should be saying, and that's great. If more people want to come, they should come in person and vote. But unfortunately, mail-in ballot is not secured. It's the most area for fraud, and quite frankly, without a proper signature, we don't know who signed that ballot. And they got to hold your ground on that, because the Democratic Party or the establishment, even the Republican Party, is kind of the establishment's hiding back on that because they know they can use that to their advantage as well. The establishment, that is. But that's where you have to point back. I would say, there's a reason why a lot of countries have just eliminated mail-in ballot. France doesn't do it. Why? Too much fraud.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like you're always going to have we want more people to vote. We want people to have it more easily. The problem is we don't have any security. So I don't think we should punish the voter with voter ID laws. But at the same time, I think there should be a mechanism to where you can track things. And we don't have that right now. And they're acting like it's not an issue. So this is how it's framed. They're framing it like it is absolutely necessary to pass this legislation. Ari Berman is one of these neoliberals. He said the GOP won't denounce the big lie because they are using it to pass wave of new voter suppression laws. If Dems want to stop the next coup, they need to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and For the People Act before it's too late. So this is what they're saying, that this is like a really good bill. And it doesn't have terrible, some things in it are actually good, but a lot of the things in it are actually not, especially in the long run. Kyle Griffin said leader Steny Hoyer, in a letter to the Democratic colleagues, outlines legislation that will soon take up. So basically, the American Rescue and Equality Act is going to be voted on this coming week of February 22nd. And the week of March 1st, the For the People Act and the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act is going to come to a vote. So be looking out for that to happen at that time. And then I just have to wait. Jay Appel actually is really supportive of this. She said, in the aftermath of the most deadly attack on our capital since the War of 1812.
Oh, geez.
Jesus Christ. The majority of Republican officials have shown that they are not here to work for the American people. That was already known. The majority of Congress isn't here to work for the American people. And they're only here to do the bidding of their one-man cult. So this is, of course, really hyper partisan BS, completely not looking at what the issue was and ignoring it, which is going to make the situation worse.
It's frightening too, fam, because we're not having the right conversations about elections at all. We're not having. There are some things we're mentioning, but the main things that we've always talked about in this studio right here are just not even being mentioned. They're forgotten about, and it's like corporately owned. It's scary stuff.
So this is how they're framing it too. Indivisible is as corrupt as they come, and they're supportive of this legislation. So just hear what some this person said. And
so, knowing the Republicans have all the control to take the House and therefore the government from us in 2022, thanks to partisan redistricting, what do? Well, first of all, we work really hard to support grassroots activism in the states where redistricting is happening. All on the Line and Indivisible are already on the ground with campaigns to put pressure on Republicans for being too aggressive with their map redistricting. Now, that's not to say we can count on Republicans to suddenly care about the will of the people, but the very worst grievances against democracy happen in the shadows, and these organizations are working really hard to keep pressure on those looking to disenfranchise the American voter. More importantly, though, we absolutely must pass the For the People Act, which is the updated John Lewis Rights Voting Act, and we have to do it immediately. The For the People Act bans partisan gerrymandering. And if we can get it passed quickly enough, we can implement it before the district lines are redrawn. In fact, the law would ban any map that favored one political party over another. Who wouldn't want that? It would also ban dark money in politics, so no more secret groups funding candidates to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. It implements automatic voter registration and stops the Republicans' malicious efforts to roll back voters' rights, as well as ridding us of any laws that have already been put in place to make it harder for people to vote. The For the People's Act is wildly popular. In fact, 2/3 of the country support it. It might be the most important piece of legislation that is in front of Congress. We must decide, do we want a rigged system that favors the minority, because that's the way we've always done it, or do we want to unrig our democracy and create an even playing field where voters have the power? Dan Pfeiffer of Crooked Media doesn't mince words. He says, if the Democrats don't pass the bill while they have the chance, it will be one of the greatest mistakes any political party has ever made. We currently have unified control of government, but if we don't strike now, we could lose power for a decade, starting in 2022. It's looking more and more like 2020 was simply a stopgap to the complete destruction of American democracy. Democrats need to win in 2022 to keep democracy itself afloat, and making elections fair is, ironically, probably the only way to do that. It doesn't matter how hard we work or how many more of us there are if the game is completely rigged against us. And we are so close to that being the case.
So we have to listen to this Becky, Karen, whoever she is.
If you go to, Johnny, if you go to the company, the media, the profile of that, you can see, no, not hers, the media roots or whatever, it's not media roots, media Midas Touch. And you go, you can tell they're very liberal, and then they have an Act Blue donation. So it's definitely a very, very hyper partisan organization. Now, some of the things she said are true. Some of the things that they're putting in the bill, after reading the entire fucking thing, are valid. Like, we're talking about gerrymandering, we're talking about the dark money thing. This is in particular is one I want to point out. They would have to. Some representatives would have to resign from corporate boards under the Democrats' ethics bill, because in it says that you cannot do that anymore. At least 15 House representatives currently sit on the board of private companies. If that passes, they would have to actually resign and not be on the board. They're calling it a conflict of interest, which I agree with. And if you go down to the bottom, the third paragraph from the bottom, under the bill, members would no longer be allowed to serve on the board of directors of for-profit companies. The change would impact at least 15 members of the House, according to Sludge's review of the financial disclosures, but it would not affect the dozens of representatives like LaMalfa who hold positions at companies besides the board seats. So again, it will do a little bit. It's not going to do what it needs to be done. Corporate board members in the House, including Cherry Hill Wine and Spirits Director, President, Secretary, and Treasurer Representative David Trone of Maryland, and Renzel Boulevard Car Wash Director, President, Secretary, and Treasurer Rep. Roger Williams from Texas. This prohibition already exists for U.S. senators, according to the Senate Code, and basically they told Sludge that the members currently on corporate boards could potentially evade the provision by dissolving their boards and forming LLCs. So again, it's a good step in the right direction, but at the end of the day, they could weasel their way around it and still continue to do what they were doing before.
It's not like true finance reform at all. So,
no, it would not apply to most LLCs, and those members that it would apply to, I would expect to evade the rule, is what they're saying. So they're not telling you the whole story.
So what would be an actual good solution? Would it be like
overturning Citizens United?
Overturning Citizens
publicly
United,
funded elections,
and then also maybe as a public servant in the United States Congress, like you relinquish your rights to be on anything like that.
Yeah, it's a conflict of interest.
Exactly.
Completely. You can't.
There's a lot of nepotism going on that way. They hand shit down to their kids, eventually squeeze it around, and they're gonna define the same ways. The only way to do is what Fiorella just said. It's just complete campaign finance reform. You get a certain amount of money from the tax money, publicly financed. Therefore, you know what I'm saying, they have events where they can set up equally. It would really even the playing field. But this is just kind of, once again, it's like a yelling in the air, virtue signaling of sorts, because they're going to find other ways to funnel money to the
It's kind of like what Biden did with ICE. Like he said, oh, like we're gonna tone it down, but those people are like, no, we're not, and they're still going around it and still deporting people, and still kids are in cages. It's the same thing. It's like, yeah, we're doing like something here, but it's really not, when it gets down to it, it's really not doing much to change it. But I am trying to be very nuanced about this, Bill, because there are issues with gerrymandering and all these things that I'm not denying, that we need to point out that it is good, and that's what they're using to get people on board to all the other stuff that you're going to see that they're pushing as well. The Intercept, of course, supports this. They wrote this article, the For the People Act would make the U.S. a democracy. No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't even fucking come close to making a democracy.
Not even close.
This is why Glenn Greenwald left the Intercept. The bill is the most crucial legislation considered by Congress in decades and would change the core structure of U.S. politics. I fucking read the whole bill. It would not change the structure of U.S. politics. Blah, blah, blah. He goes on to talk about it. And some of the things he says, though, like, for example, let's read this one. The For the People Act would require states with voter ID requirements to allow people to vote with identification if they complete a sworn statement attesting they are who they are. It would make it impossible for states to engage in bogus purging of voter rolls. States could no longer stop people with felony convictions from voting after they've served their time, and would require to inform them in writing that they can now vote again. Yes, felons voting is absolutely something that should happen. It's something that when Florida passed that, it was amazing.
After you serve your time, absolutely.
And I think it's totally great. I'm even more of the person that says if you're a felon, you should still be able to vote, even if you are in jail. But that's my opinion.
I'd even be willing to say that too. I mean, I'm not even against that, at all. But definitely 1,000%. If you served your time, you're gonna tell you still can never vote. That is a bullshit fucking thing. Excuse my French for cursing. But once you served your time, you've paid your debt to society. You better be given your voting rights back. And fam, I'd even argue probably to go in and say that people in jail can vote too as well. I'm not saying I'm dead set against it or for it, but definitely the latter. And also, too, the way they kind of frame the engaging of the bogus of the voter rolls.
Right, so that's what I wanted to mention. It's not... Yes, people do in some Republican red states get thrown off the voter rolls. Historically, it was always, people of color. All of that stuff is true. But the other side of the coin is that on purpose, people are also kept and the voter rolls are not updated. And so then you get people sent ballots in multiple places. And so it's ripe for fraud as well. And they're completely discounting that as something that doesn't happen. And it does happen. And it's not voter fraud. It's election fraud. Again, it's not people doing it as individuals. It's a whole organization. And when there's no security in that and you're completely ignoring it, you're not really telling the whole picture. They're saying it's going to create a modern infrastructure. Also, it would, and I'm going to go over some of this too. It's going to basically, you're going to be eligible automatic registration. You're going to have automatic registration. That's a good thing. Like, to be automatically registered, all eligible voters are going to be, registered. But they talk about how it's going to be secure and all this stuff. No, it's not, because they're not really changing how we do the election. The gerrymandering, stopping the gerrymandering, redistricting by the Republicans, that's actually a good thing. But at the same time, they're saying that it's going to allow for an even keel. Well, it's not. If the Democrats decide that they're going to put more mail ballot drop-offs in an area where there's more Democrats and not do the same thing for Republicans, there's no accountability for the questions people have that happened this past election at all. It's just more of like the Republicans did this and Russia. So I'm going to go into I'm going to try to do it as quickly as possible, getting you guys the understanding. So it starts on page 7. It just goes over exactly like a table of contents, right? What they're going to be talking about. HR 1, let me see. I'm not seeing that one over here, but I can, yeah, there it is. You guys can see it. That's where it is. And basically they talk about the provisions of states, and they talk about saving eligible voters from vote purging. And it's just going to go over the voting system and security. And a lot of the primary facets of this whole bill was the security in the voting system and also the grants that states would receive by doing them. So like if you take in the new regulations and you start doing what they tell you, you're eligible to receive grants for your state. So that's how they're getting people to do it. I wanted to specifically read on page 8, enhancing protections for United States democratic institutions. The national strategy to protect U.S. democratic institutions. These are the sections that they're talking about. National Commission to protect U.S. democratic institutions, promoting cybersecurity through improvements in election administration, testing of existing voting systems, which again, how are they testing? So far, their idea of testing is not the same thing as what we're talking about. To ensure compliance with election cybersecurity guidelines and other guidelines, treatment of electronic poll books as part of the voting system, pre-election reports, streaming collection of election information. They talk about preventing election hacking. They talked about miscellaneous and yeah, it's a lot of information, but let's get to it. So right here, Congress finds that the Constitution of the United States grants explicit and broad authority to protect the right to vote, to regulate elections for federal office, and to defend the nation's democratic process. Congress enacts the For the People Act of 2021. Now, there was a For the People Act of 2019. That was the original one. Pursuant to the broad authority, including but not limited to the following. Congress finds that it has broad authority to regulate the time, place, and manner of congressional elections under the Election Clause of the Constitution, Article 1, Section 4, Clause 1. The Election Clause is what they're going to refer to throughout this whole this whole bill. The Supreme Court has affirmed that the substantive scope of the Election Clause is broad, that time, places, and manner are comprehensive words which embrace authority to provide for a complete code of congressional elections. So that is their language, basically, that they can regulate and supersede those powers of the state which are inconsistent. So they're saying that Congress has the power to go above the states due to the Election Clause, and they're using the Election Clause to say that if they feel like Congress isn't, or the states aren't doing their job, Congress has a right to impose and to pretty much manipulate the whole thing, which is something that has never been said before, but it's kind of dangerous when you think about it in respect to what happened regarding this past election. Any comments on that?
Just go through.
As a result, Congress finds that it has authority of the 14th Amendment to protect the right to vote. The state and localities have eroded access to the right to vote through restrictions on the rights, to include excessively onerous voter identification requirements, burdensome voter registration procedures, voter purges, limited and unequal access to voting by mail, polling place closures, unequal distribution of election resources, and other impediments, which, I mean, some of these are true, but at the same time, like I'm saying, they're manipulating this information to impose the bigger crux of what they want to impose, which is more control over how they want to do the elections. Congress also finds that the right of the suffrage can be denied by a debasement of delusion of the weight of citizens' vote just as effectively as by the wholly prohibiting the free exercise of the franchise. So the fourth point, Congress also finds that it has the authority to legislate to eliminate racial discrimination in voting and democratic process in both Section 5 of the 14th Amendment. talking about equal protection rights of the laws. So like I was saying, they basically are trying to say that they're attacking gerrymandering, they're attacking strict voter identification laws. Yeah. But you have to but we have to acknowledge that does happen, right?
Absolutely.
So they can absolutely use it to say this is what we're trying to achieve, which is it's hard to argue against, because then you're like, oh, do you not want people of color to vote? Do you not want minorities to vote? Do you not want more blah blah blah? It's not that. It's like they're completely ignoring the other aspect of election integrity. They're completely not talking about it because it's beneficial to them, and that's not right.
The whole macro, what Fiorella just wrote too, as well, is like we talk back, digressing back to the Congress and the federal government having authority over the states. We can see a lot of states right now, in the case of Arizona, kind of getting loosey-goosey, getting ready, saying, no, we're demanding our own third independent audit. And the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors is looking to the federal government to help them out to supersede and put the state back down.
Yeah.
So this is also going to tell the state how they can and cannot do audits, right? And you were looking at that audit, that thing. It's like, well, who's going to get the grants for the audits? You'll get the grants if you use these two companies for the audits, these companies we talked about, then we'll give you the money.
Right.
In other words, if you play along with the federal government and you go by their ways, and a lot of their ways are just not looking really in deep of what the elections are about, then they'll give you the money, then they'll do that. There is an issue with gerrymandering and stuff like that. But establishment players on both sides take advantage of that situation, so we have to keep our eye on that. And yes, we do want to include more people to vote, but we have to understand the securities with it. And that's the big push right now. That's what they're doing. They're saying voices are being suppressed. By doing it this way, we get more people to be involved. So yes, it is a whole kind of battle of the language of what's going on, and you're battling back with the liberals and the establishment saying, stop being, racist and telling people they can't vote. We're trying to get people more to vote. But yet they're allowing them avenues to come in and fix it more, even more than it was this last time. So go ahead.
Right. And it's not the people's fault that this is happening, obviously.
Not at all.
So I don't agree that people should be punished because of the lack of security of the elections, but at the same time, they're very, very manipulative with this whole thing. So just quickly, the provision of election information by electronic mail to individuals registered to vote. So now all of the election information you get is going to be via email. It's going to be, it used to be sent to you by regular mail. They're going to start doing more emailing, which again, it's a good thing for accessibility, a bad thing for security. Yeah. Because if you start doing everything by email, then it's obviously ripe for hacking.
I was just going to say, fam, too, there are ways to do that, but they're not going to include the securities that we know about with them. In fact, they'll just be so that you can print them out all the time and there's no tracking of them, so you'll have these extra ballots. There is a way, when you print certain barcodes, certain labeling of ballots, and also the tracking part, which would clear up a lot of stuff, but they never include anything like that in this bill. So
prohibiting use of electronic mail addresses for other than official purposes, right? So they're saying that it's only going to be for official purposes, that they're going to be using this to carry out official duties, etc. And let me just scroll down to page 94, Johnny. Part 9, providing voter registration information to secondary school students. So they're basically going to do this pilot program for providing voter registration information to secondary school students prior to education. To graduation. It's a new program. The Election Assistance Commission shall carry out a pilot program under which the commission shall provide funds during the 1-year period beginning the date of the enactment of this part of eligible local and educational agencies for initiatives to provide information on registering to vote in elections for public office to secondary school students in the 12th grade. So this is good because we were talking about younger people being able to vote. They're going to vote more progressive. They're going to vote in those ways. I have no issue with this whatsoever. But they are doing this program. If people follow it, they get more grants, is basically the premise of that. Now, if you go to subtitle D, this title is prohibiting deceptive practices and preventing voter intimidation. Like I said, again, the focus is making sure that people get to vote, that they're not intimidated. There was the whole accusation that, a lot of the Proud Boys were standing in the way of people voting and all of these things that were happening. So they're using that to say, now you can't prohibit people from exercising their right to vote. And
I'm curious what Jonny feels about that one. So, all right.
It says no person, whether acting under the law, on the color of law, or otherwise, shall within 60 days before an election described in paragraph 5 by any means, including by means of written, electronic, or telephonic communications, communicate or cause to be communicated information described in the subparagraph, or produce information described in subparagraph with the intent that such information be communicated if such person knows such information to be materially false and has the intent to impede. So basically they're saying that you cannot, if you will, they later go on to talk about how people will be fined and up to being jailed if you are found to prohibit somebody from voting. But they don't specify exactly what that is. It could be you telling somebody, hey, the election is being rigged. Be careful, blah, blah, blah. Or what we did when we were saying don't accept a provisional ballot. Or it could be something like that, because that would technically classify as preventing people from voting, but you're not. You're simply giving them information. So the problem with that is it's so broad that they can use it to say, oh, they said something false about the current election, they're prohibiting me from voting. And that is dangerous, because that sets a precedent where if you're talking about election malfeasance, now all of a sudden you are prohibiting people from voting. You are disencouraging them from voting. And that's the dangerous thing that I saw with this one in particular, specifically, the fact that they said that you could say anything. And then I was wondering what the definition of materially false is. And it basically means, a statement about an endorsement is materially false if, with respect to an upcoming election described in paragraph 5, the statement states that a specifically named person, political party, or organization has endorsed the election of a specific candidate for a federal office described in such paragraph, and such person, political party, or organization has not endorsed the election of such candidate, hindering interference with or preventing voting or registering to vote. No person, whether acting under the color of the law or otherwise, shall intentionally hinder, interfere with, or prevent another person from voting, registering to vote, or aiding another person to vote, or register to vote in an election described in paragraph 5. An election described in this paragraph basically is a primary, a runoff, or special election held or in part for the purpose of nominating a candidate for the office of president, vice president, presidential elector, member of the Senate, member of the House of Representatives, or a delegate or commissioner from a territory or possession. So this applies to any election. So if they feel that you are hindering the other people from voting, then you will be fined or jailed. And they later go on to describe exactly just how much. And then right here on page 128 out of 791, it talks about the false statements regarding federal elections. Of course, they had to include that. It shall be unlawful for any person, whether acting under the color of law or otherwise, within 60 days before an election, by any means, including by written, electronic, telephonic, to communicate or cause to be communicated information described in paragraph B, or produce information with the intent that such information be communicated if such person knows such information to be materially false and has the intent to mislead voters or the intent to impede or prevent another person from exercising the right to vote in the election.
The hell does that even mean?
Basically that
so
if you say
broad.
something, exactly, it's broad on purpose. So if you say something like, the election is being rigged, that there, these ballots are being stuffed, anything like that, without having any sort of proof, they're saying if you know it to be materially false, which how would they deduce that you know what you know or you don't know, then you're going to get in trouble. You will be fined and you will be jailed. And so this is like, that is the issue I have with this bill, because they're basically trying to make it a crime for you to question elections. And they're doing it, of course, post 1/6 because they have the ability to do that. Like they have this is the perfect moment to do that, using the guise of gerrymandering, etc. Promoting accuracy, integrity, and security through our voter verified permanent paper ballot. So they're saying, I'm just going to summarize this, but they're basically saying that now we're going to have paper ballots, you guys. everything's going to have a paper ballot, an individual durable voter verified paper ballot that shall be marked and inspected and verified by the voter before the voter, is before it's counted, when it shall be counted by hand and read by an optical character recognition device or other counting device, blah, blah, blah. So the problem with this, though, is this is nothing new. So what they're calling a paper ballot is basically what you put into the ballot marking device. You look at it, you print it out, and then you put it back in the machine. They're calling that a paper ballot. That's not a paper ballot because you don't get to keep it. There's no tracking on it. And also, they're saying that it's going to be verified by the machine. It's not verified by the machine. We have 1% audits, if that, and the machines haven't been up to par in working to match the signatures. And so when you're not having 100% audits by people, then they're acting like, oh yeah, this is all verified and stuff. They're glossing over that because they're not telling you the specifics. The signatures are never verified. The machines aren't up to standards that they should be. And there's no actual audit that really happens besides the 1% audit by these machines, which are found to be faulty. They're completely ignoring that and saying this is that you're having a paper ballot. You are not getting a paper ballot. A paper ballot would be you going and filling in like an actual paper and having some sort of tracking that you can keep that. And then the rest of it goes on a computer and you get to track it. That would be a paper ballot. This is not, it's just a printout that you have to put back in. You don't get to keep it in any way, shape, or form. So it's really disingenuous the way they're trying to make people believe like now it's all paper ballots and it's backed up, because it's not. This is how it's been for a while. And then they're talking about manual counting requirements for recounts and audits, right? So each paper ballot, they're saying, should be suitable for a manual audit and counted by hand in any recount or audit. So, which is interesting because that never happens. In the event of any inconsistencies or irregularities between any electronic vote tallies and the vote tallies determined by counting by hand in the individual durable voter verified paper ballots, there's no tracking these ballots. Used pursuant to clause I and subject to paragraph B, the individual durable voter verified paper ballots shall be true and correct record of the votes cast. So they're saying it should be easy to follow up because it's a paper ballot, and they're saying that they're going to push for hand counts. The requirements of this subparagraph shall apply to all ballots cast in the elections for federal office. It says it is demonstrated by clear and convincing evidence in any recount, audit, or contest of the result of the election that the paper ballots have been compromised by damage or mischief otherwise, and that a sufficient number of the ballots have been so compromised that the result of the election could be changed. So they're talking here about in the event that any of this happens, then this is what they're going to do. The determination of the appropriate remedy with respect to the election shall be made in accordance with applicable state law, except that the electronic tally should not be used as the exclusive basis for determining the official certified results. Rule for consideration of ballots associated with each voting machine. For the purposes of the clause, only the paper ballots deemed compromised, if any, shall be considered in the calculation of whether or not the result of the election could be changed due to the compromised paper ballots. So again, only the ballots that they say, oh, like there's an issue with this ballot, are going to be considered for that. Not necessarily the fact that the machine, there's anything wrong with the machine. Not necessarily the fact that there's anything wrong with anything else. In general, a state may not refuse to accept or process a ballot. So this is really important. A state may not refuse to accept or process a ballot submitted by an individual by mail with respect to an election for federal office in the state on the grounds that the individual did not meet the deadline for returning the ballot to the appropriate state or local election official. So, and then they go down to list why. This came into play in this past election where a lot of the Republicans were claiming that they extended the deadlines. They were receiving ballots after the date and they were still counting them. So they're putting this on to say that they can't say no to that anymore if the ballot is postmarked, signed, or otherwise indicated by the U.S. Postal Service to have been mailed on or before the date of the election, and if the ballot is received by the appropriate election official prior to the expiration of the 10-day period, which begins on the date of the election. Nothing in this subsection shall be constructed to prohibit a state from having a law that allows for counting of ballots in an election for federal office that are received through the mail after the date that is 10 days after the date of the elections. So they're basically allowing people to have leeway to how long they receive these ballots. That was one of the things that Trump and the Republicans were saying, they're allowing more ballots to come in late. This shouldn't be happening. And the Democrats were saying, do you want people to vote? Are you trying to keep people from voting? And that was the narrative that was being used. Well, I think there should be some flexibility. They're obviously taking advantage of this to, do what they do, which is they rig elections on both the establishment rigs elections. This can apply, of course, to say with Bernie Sanders supporters or whoever, let's say somebody runs for president on the progressive end, all of these, you're going to be on the Trump end because they're going to use all of this against you as well.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the thing that we talked about. Since ballot harvesting is legal, since there's no tracking on ballots, since they can just produce mass amounts, they can put them in a drop box. These mail-in ballots can come in out of the blue late whenever. You know what I'm saying? If you're part of the people who are in line where these ballots are created and you can get a hold of them, and that's very, very easy nowadays. People always say, well, how do you get a hold of these ballots? Well, once again, they're protecting the voter registration rolls on this bill, so you can't mess with them. The states can't go in there and clean them, which is an issue we have to talk about anyways. So now just think about it as a progressive that you're leading 2 days after the election, but yeah, they allow now, because the federal law supersedes the state law and says, no, they have 10 days after, all of a sudden a bunch of ballots show up for the establishment guy, and it's going to happen. It's going to happen against progressives just as easy as it happened against, Donald Trump when they came in the middle of the night so late, but this could happen up to 10 days after. It's giving them more time to triculate them in, whatnot. It's a recipe for disaster for allowing this to happen. If we are going to have mail-in, it needs to come by the day of, maybe 2 days after, if that.
Yeah, there should be some leeway, but
a leeway you can let a little bit and stuff. But once again, the majority of these mail-ins come in almost a week before the election, 80% of them. So, but this is a way for the establishment to gain system when they have the tools to say, hey, we're going to cheat you. Combine this with ballot harvesting, and it's a recipe for disaster. So.
Exactly. And this is hard to navigate these waters when I'm talking about this bill because it's like I said, there are some good things that they're leading with, but the vast majority of these good things do not outweigh what their intent is for it to happen. But, I'm acknowledging all of it because their language gets really bad. Basically, also, if the ballot in election was provided under this section to return, if in addition to permitting an individual to whom a ballot in this election was provided under the section to return the ballot to an election official by mail, the state shall permit the individual to cast the ballot by delivering the ballot at such times to such locations. They may permit voters to designate another person to return the ballot. So again, this is the same thing
ballot
of ballot harvesting
in federal law.
They're putting ballot harvesting in federal law. Exactly.
So instead of 26 states, fam, it will be all 50.
All 50 states.
All 50 states.
Right. So again, ballot harvesting, it's conservatives jumped on it because yes, some of them don't want people of color to vote. That is true. But we were against it because there's no security. If you could provide security for all those ballots, I wouldn't care, but there's no method of security at all right now. And the dumping of ballots is something that actually happens. Yeah. This is why Tulsi had that legislation. And then she was called, a right winger for having that legislation. Yeah. And because people don't understand what we're talking about here. When you have an ability, if I give Pasta my ballot, Johnny gives him his ballot, and we give him all of the ballots in Pasadena to take, Pasta can go and say, I'm going to change this to Tulsi from Bernie.
I'm just going to throw that one away.
Or he can accidentally lose 10 ballots. You wouldn't know. Nobody would know because there's no tracking of them. Now it's in law. And so basically, they shall permit a voter to designate any person to return a voted and sealed absentee ballot to the post office, a ballot drop-off location, tribally designated building, or election of office, so long as a person designated to return the ballot does not receive any form of compensation based on the number of ballots that the person has returned, and no individual group or organization provides compensation on the basis. It says compensation, but it doesn't say they can't organize anything. You notice that. May not put any limit onto how many voted and sealed absentee ballots any designated person can return to the post office.
A ballot drop-off
There's no,
location.
I could literally have like 10,000 ballots You're telling me that that's legal?
Yeah.
Shit, I'm gonna go ballot harvest for the progressive then. I'm gonna go try to like protect these ballots then. What the fuck? This is crazy.
Yeah. And by the way, when it comes to ballot harvesting, the main thing it does, it destroys the chain of custody. And the chain of custody is one of the most important things in elections. Go ahead, fam.
But they're saying that according to Section 308, the absentee ballot tracking program. So it's going to have a tracking program. Each state shall carry out a program to track and confirm the receipt of absentee ballots in an election for federal office, under which the state or local election official responsible for the receipt of voted absentee ballots in the election carries out procedures to track and confirm the receipt of such ballots and make information on the receipt of such ballots available to the individual who cast the ballot by means of online access using the internet site of the official's office. So again, who's the official? What do they mean by tracking and access? Part B, information on whether vote was counted. The information referred to under subsection A with respect to the receipt of the absentee ballot shall include information regarding whether the vote cast on the ballot was counted, and in the case of vote which was not counted, okay, the reasons therefore. Okay, but that's if the ballot was counted. That's not tracking the actual ballot, where it goes from, which hands it goes to.
Yep.
You see the difference? There's no like, oh, this ballot has a UPS tracking number. I just got my passport renew. I have a tracking number on that passport. It's going to tell me where it's at, where it's going. I paid more money to get that, to have a security. I can't do that with my ballot. You can't do that. But they're saying, oh, it's going to be tracked. No, the only thing, nothing changes. Even now, you can go online and check to see if your ballot was counted or not. It doesn't tell you who it was counted for.
Exactly.
It doesn't tell you when or anything like that or where it went. It just simply tells you, yes, your vote counted, or no, your vote did not count, or something.
Yeah. And I think it's also duping people to think, hey, man, you'll be able to find out if your vote counted, which is kind of cool when you think about it. But that's not the things that really sway the election, because there's a lot of other ballots that we don't know who these are that get counted. So it might seem good for the individual, but the overall macro of the election, it doesn't fix anything if there's a bunch of extra ballots out there that get counted. There's no person to go check on them. You know what I'm saying? It's just, they're going to be counted. So that's the issue. We have to look at the security reasons behind it.
They didn't provide any further specifics regarding how that would be tracked, but they're calling it tracking.
Yeah.
They're calling it track. They didn't provide any specifics. Yeah. Now they talk about federal election integrity in this section. Prohibition on campaign activities by Chief State Election Administration, I guess I'm hungry, officials. And it says campaign activities by chief election officials, administration officials. It says it shall be unlawful for a chief state election administration official to take an active part in political management or in a political campaign with respect to any election for federal office for which such official has supervisory authority. So Alex Padilla is an example that apparently should be prohibited, but it doesn't. The term chief state election administration of official means that the highest state official with responsibilities for the administration of federal elections under state law, which would be the Secretary of State and et cetera. Exactly.
Well, it's going to be somebody else now.
Yeah, it's going to be somebody else now. I think
Xavier
it's going to
Barrera?
be, yeah, he's another corporate
girl.
establishment guy.
Temporarily. Oh, I don't know.
Okay.
Active part in political management or in a political campaign. So basically what they're saying means if they're holding any position, including any unpaid or honorary position, so they don't have to be paid, with an authorized committee of a candidate or participating in any decision-making of the authorized committee of a candidate, the use of official authority or influence for the purpose of interfering with or affecting the election. So if they are involved in any way, shape, or form, they cannot be at the head. The problem with that is that it's happened before. Alex Padilla was literally campaigning for Hillary Clinton while he was Secretary of State. Supporting Joe Biden. I think the second time he wasn't as involved in the campaign, but he was, there was still a conflict of interest, very much so the first time when he was fundraising for Hillary Clinton. That's a complete no-no. So they're saying they're not going to do that anymore. But here are the exceptions. In case of refusal from administration of elections involving official or immediate family member. So in general, This does not apply to a chief state election administration official with respect to an election for federal office in which the official or an immediate family member of the official is a candidate, but only if such official recuses himself or herself from all the official responsibilities for the administration of such election, and the official who assumes responsibility for supervising the administration of the election does not report directly to such official. So if they're not reporting directly, or if they can't find any actual ties to, let's say, Alex Padilla fundraising for Joe Biden, then he still gets to oversee the election, even if he is partial to Joe Biden, even if he attends his dinners, even if he goes, as long as there's no direct tie to him, then he can still do this, which is still a conflict of interest, and they're gonna be doing this and getting away with it. And then let's go down to page 340, and they're talking about Section 8A, conditions for removal of voters from official lists of registered voters. Reliable evidence of ineligibility, requiring verification notwithstanding of any person of this act. A state may not remove the name of any registrant from the official list of voters eligible to vote in elections for federal office in the state unless the state verifies on the basis of objective and reliable evidence, whatever that means, that the registrant is ineligible to vote in such elections. And factors not considered as objective and reliable evidence of ineligibility for purposes of paragraph 1. Basically, the failure of the registrant to vote. Basically, if it's going to be very difficult for them to take somebody out. Yeah. Right? It's going to be very difficult for a state to prove because it's so broad.
Yeah. This is the area where it gets very, very sticky and whatnot. This is like the whole thing with the purging of voters from the rolls.
Yeah.
How do we do this? Is it, you know what I'm saying? Because there's it's a problem within a problem, right? You know, because people have suppressed people on the rolls. We saw what happened in Florida with the cross-reference list when they were able to remove all these names from the voter rolls, and it was very racial. It was disgusting. And it was the George Bush election stuff. But then you also have a situation where everybody can go out there and you'll say, when you move, did you call your elections official and tell them to take you off the voter roll? No. And therefore now the states can't clean these in a way. It's an issue we have to figure out how we do this. That's why we would talk about statewide databases, and people can automatically register. And when they go to register, if they know their social security number, then it will go in a system that said, okay, this person voted.
Right.
That would be the secure way. You know, and you could secure these registration things. But this is also another way. If you cannot touch these voter rolls, then you're going to have an obscene amount of extra ballots that don't reach their place because people either passed away or moved. And now those ballots come into play because they be walked in because harvesting is also legal.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So it's a vicious cycle, fam.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so I just wanted to read that part that got cut off. The failure of the registrant to vote in any election. The failure of the registrant to respond to any notice sent under Section 8D unless the notice has been returned as undeliverable, or the failure of the registrant to take any action with respect to the voting in any election with respect to the registrant's status as a registrant. So if you move, like Pasta just said, if you move and you don't respond, you're still going to be able to vote, which is good because sometimes college students, you know, like they have an address here, they have an address somewhere else where they're going to school, etc. Yeah. But the problem is that there's no looking into that. There's no verification. If you don't respond, they're still going to send you a ballot. They're still going to send you a ballot, maybe states, in both accounts. Yeah. So that's still the same problem that we've had.
Some states, fam, had the law that if you didn't vote in the 3 previous elections, they would automatically remove you from the thing. That's where a lot of people were arguing, well, that's racist, that just because they didn't want to vote in this one, now you remove them, and now they can't vote. You purge them because it was, right. You know what I'm saying? So it's a very, very, it's a situation that has to be worked out. This is a situation I'd like to talk more with about a lot of people who are into these registration polls, other than some people that we know, because it is a very unique situation that we have to create. A voter database, a federal voter database might help out. I don't know. So.
So now we're getting on to the election security part.
Here we go.
Where they're talking about election security. And that's just like the table of contents, Johnny. But this part is what we're going to focus on in enhancing protections for United States democratic institutions. By enhancing protections, they mean cybersecurity. As you can see, promoting cybersecurity through improvements in election administration, the testing of existing voting systems to ensure compliance with election cybersecurity. So basically, the voting system security improvements described. A voting system security improvement in this section is any of the following: the acquisition of goods and services from qualified election infrastructure vendors by purchase, lease, or such arrangements as may be appropriate. 2. Cyber and risk mitigation training. A security risk and vulnerability assessment of the state's election infrastructure, which is carried out by a provider of cybersecurity services.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay, so we're talking about vendors here. We're talking about people who sell these machines, and the security and the looking into how well it's working is gonna be done by these same fucking vendors. So you're having the police investigate themselves, the bank robbers investigate themselves, and it's gonna continue. This is basically what they're saying.
Now,
in layman's terms, that's what they're talking about. The state election official and the provider, the maintenance of election infrastructure, including addressing risks and vulnerabilities, which are identified under either of the security risk and vulnerability assessments, except that none of the funds provided under this part may be used to renovate or replace a building or facility which is used primarily for purposes other than administration of elections for public office. They're going to be providing increased technical support for any information or technological or technology infrastructure that the officials deem a part of. So that's what the vendors are going to be doing, and this is more on the vendors. Basically, what is a vendor, right? Who qualifies as being a vendor? It's any person who provides, supports, or maintains, or who seeks to provide or maintain, and this is page 355 out of 791, an election infrastructure on behalf of the state, unit of local government, or election agency. And, of course, they're referring back to Election Security Act. The criteria described in this paragraph as the chairman, in coordination with the Secretary of Homeland Security, shall establish and publish and shall include each of the following requirements. The vendor must be owned and controlled by a citizen or permanent resident of the United States. So the vendor must disclose the chairman and secretary and to the chief state election official of any state to which the vendor provides any goods and services with funds provided under this part of any sourcing outside the United States for parts of the election infrastructure. The vendor must disclose to the chairman and the secretary of state and to the chief election official of any state to which the vendor provides any goods and services funds. Under this part, the identification of any entity or individual with a more than 5% ownership interest in the vendor. The vendor agrees to ensure that the election infrastructure will be developed and maintained in a manner that is consistent with the cybersecurity best practices issued by the Technical Guidelines Development Committee. The vendor agrees to maintain its information technology infrastructure in a manner that is consistent with the practices of what they deem. So the vendor has so much responsibility. The vendor is going to be overlooking the security. The vendor is going to be looking the machines. The vendor is going to be looking at if there's a problem. They say that their word that they're going to fix it. The vendor has to now disclose if they're working with a foreign entity. They put that in there because of Venezuela, China.
This is for the Republican establishment, fam. Exactly.
Right.
So you can say, "Oh, Miss McConnell over here, you can see now we're not going to let people from Venezuela control our elections."
The ghost of Hugo Chavez will no longer be allowed to control the election.
It's simply not going to happen, fam. And also, too, let's be honest right now, Democrats are not really serious about cybersecurity anyways, because all these machines, which they approved in all these audits, whatnot, and even in Arizona right now, that they're accessible by internet right now. And they're supposed to be non-accessible, air gaps not allowed to get into, and every step of the way. And they've gamed the system, too, as well, where they have internet in these rooms. Mm-hmm. So cybersecurity is just a joke when they're trying to throw it out there right now.
So the next part I'm just going to briefly go over. It's just they're going to give out grants for risk-limiting audits of results of the election.
Okay.
They're not normal audits, fam. They're just risk-limiting audits. That's what they're calling them. Basically, they're going to give a grant to each eligible state to conduct risk-limiting audits with respect to a regularly scheduled general elections of federal office held in November of 2020. And so they're prepping for 2020 and 2024, as you can see. And each
2022.
2022 risk limiting audits described in this part include basically which is conducted in accordance with rules and procedures established by the chief of election and meet the requirements basically under which if the reported outcome of the election is incorrect, there's at least predetermined percentage chance that the audit will replace the incorrect income with the correct outcome as determined by the full hand to eye tabulation of all votes cast. And so this risk limiting audit shall include the rules for ensuring the security of ballots and documented that prescribed procedures were followed. Basically, they're going to be including it's not a real audit.
It's a logic and accuracy test, and that's what they exactly said. It's going to make sure that the machine is doing what it's doing it right. These were followed. That's the audit taken by. It's not really examining ballot images or ballots themselves and matching them up. It's a fugazi audit. It's what we're seeing right now, and they're just kind of enhancing that language so that this is the same company. They did an audit. They can say they did an audit, but really we didn't get one single friggin' audit. They're just logic and accuracy test. So. Yeah,
that's exactly what they are. And so then the reason they're doing this is because they're now going to assess pre-election threat assessments. Now, the no later than 180 days, and this is 380 out of 791, no later than 180 days before the date of each regularly scheduled general election for federal office, the Director of National Intelligence shall submit an assessment of the full scope of threats, including cybersecurity threats posed by state actors and terrorist groups to election infrastructure and recommendations to address or mitigate such threats. So that's what they're going to be doing. They're basically going to be doing a pre-crime assessment. If you are found in any way, shape, or form to being a threat to the elections, they're going to be assessing that, which could be countries, they could be foreign entities, it could be people. And let's go down to security. Security, enhancing protections for U.S. democratic institutions. And basically, the president acting through the secretary in consultation with the chairman, the secretary of defense, the secretary of state, the attorney general, secretary of education, director of national intelligence, the chairman of the Federal Election Commission, and the heads of any other appropriate federal agency shall issue a national strategy to protect against cyber attacks. This is basically what the crux of what they want to do: influence operations, disinformation campaigns, and other activities that could undermine the security and integrity of the United States democratic institutions. So again, you could be a terrorist, considered a terrorist threat if you're questioning the elections. We could be blaming China and Russia. This is what they're going to be doing. The national strategy required under the subsection shall include the threat of a foreign state actor, foreign terrorist organization, as designated pursuant to Section 219 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, or a domestic actor carrying out a cyber attack, influence operation, disinformation campaign, or any other activity aimed to undermine the security or integrity of our elections.
But wasn't this the most secure election of all times? Then why do we have to do this, fam?
That's
if it
what
was
I
the
thought,
most
fam.
secure elections in modern time.
The consequences are an erosion of public trust or undermining the rule of law that could result from a successful cyber attack, influence operation, disinformation campaign, or other activity aimed at undermining the security and integrity, blah, blah, blah. So, lessons learned from other governments, the institutions of which were subject to a cyber attack, influence operation, disinformation campaigns, blah, blah, blah. So basically, they're doing this because they want to protect our democratic elections that are so free and transparent and democratic. And they're saying that if the consequences are eroding public trust, and if you're doing that or found any way to undermine the democracy in our elections, you're eroding public trust, and that's dangerous. They're eroding public trust, which they're not admitting to. And that's basically what they're doing. So, yeah.
They're also trying to keep to the narrative that, once again, it's outside actors who affected these elections, especially in 2016. They still want you to make you think it was Russia.
Yeah.
Yet when when it just comes down to it, it's within arm's length that's messing with these elections. Let's secure them here. The Russia doesn't give a shit who we elect. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah,
maybe they do.
exactly. Well,
they ain't doing nothing to swing an election.
Yeah, no, but that's what they're saying.
Ridiculous.
Okay, let's scroll down to, because we don't have a lot of time. They talk about preventing election hacking. It's basically more of the same thing, that they're going to have this election security bug bounty program. And that if you're part of a state that goes into this program, you're going to be getting grants. And this is on page, I'm not sure, but it's the titles, Preventing Election Hacking. And then the use of voting machines manufactured in the United States. So they're saying, like, now the voting machines are going to be coming from the United States, not from
We're not
Venezuela.
getting no
blah
more
blah
pieces
blah.
from China, fam.
But-
That's what I'm saying.
But
Mitch McConnell.
but it's like it's bullshit because we don't even know who
Well,
owns and what.
They gave language in this. The establishment Democrats gave language for the establishment Republicans
Right.
to justify why they're going to sign this bill.
Right.
We made sure that no China's going to be making pieces, and now it's going to come.
So it's now a
I'm
duty.
sorry.
It's now a duty to report foreign election interference.
Ooh.
They're talking about how criminals, terrorists, and corrupt government officials frequently abuse anonymously held limited liability companies or LLCs, shell companies to hide, move, and launder dirty money from illicit activities such as trafficking, bribery, and all of this is true, right? This is what they do. It's talking about the Panama Papers, and they're using that. So that it's going to be harder for people to do that according to them. But we already talked about how there's so many loopholes that they can get away with. This is, again, strengthening oversight of online political advertising. So this in particular is in regard to Russiagate. They're talking about, they're going to call it the Honest Ads Act. The purpose of this subtitle is to enhance the integrity of American democracy and national security. Basically, that, here it is. On January 6, 2017, the Director of National Intelligence published a report titled Assessing Russian Activities and Intentions in Recent U.S. Elections, noting that the Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered an influence campaign in 2016 aimed at U.S. presidential election.
Jesus
Moscow's
Christmas.
influence campaign followed a Russian messaging strategy that blends covert intelligence operations such as cyber activity with overt efforts by Russian government agencies, state-funded media, third-party intermediaries, and paid social media users, or quote trolls. On November 24th, 2016, the Washington Post reported findings from two teams of independent researchers that concluded Russians exploited American-made technology platforms to attack U.S. elections.
Washington Post.
Well, to attack U.S. democracy, and then the elections through democracy. And they talked about how they found project at Oxford Internet Institute, the propaganda research project at the Oxford Institute, found the Kremlin is using pro-Russian bots to manipulate public discourse to a highly targeted audience. They talk about the
Still
tweets.
living that lie.
They talk
Still
about
living that
all of
lie.
this. Yeah, they
Still
talk
living
about
that
all of
lie.
that. They're putting this lie in a legal document,
Yeah.
guys.
Inciting the Washington Post.
Russiagate was completely debunked, and they're putting it in here just so you guys know. This is like disgusting. And they talked about the nation's largest social media platform disclosed that between June 2015 and May 2015, Russian entities purchased 100,000 in political advertisements, publishing a roughly 3,000 ads linked to fake accounts associated with Internet Research Agency, a pro-Kremlin organization, and they use it to amplify divisive social media political messages. Basically, there's going on with Russiagate. Basically, they used the Cold War. The former director of national security said that during the Cold War, if the Soviet Union sought to manipulate information flow, it would have to do with principally through its own propaganda outlet, through which the active measures that would generate specific news and planting of leaflets, inciting violence, creating of other false materials and narratives. But the news itself was hard to manipulate because it would have required actual control of organs of media. But today, because of clear majority of information on social media is uncurated, there's a rapid proliferation of information sources and other sites that can reinforce information, an increase in likelihood that the information available to the average consumer may be inaccurate. So they're going after media now, independent media too, because they're going to be saying, oh, this is all inaccurate. You're spreading misinformation. This is part of the censorship issue. And they're talking about that they're going to focus on these political ads, and they're going to ensure that these laws are carried out to make sure that everything is transparent and democratic, that they're going to promote free and fair elections, and that political advertisement is basically essential to reinforcing this this whole thing. And on Section 325, basically the prohibition of distribution of materially deceptive media prior to the election. So this is important right here, because if we're talking about election fraud, you're going to be targeted. If you're talking about anything questioning the elections, right? It says, except as provided in subsections B and C, a person, a political committee, or other entity shall not, within 60 days of a federal office, election for a federal office, for a candidate for elective office will appear on the ballot, distribute with actual malice materially deceptive audio or visual media of the candidate which to intent with the intent to injure the candidate's reputation. So anything you do regarding whether you're visual media, whether you are audio, whether you are social media, and you could be in trouble, you could be fined. And it doesn't apply to radio or television broadcasting stations or satellite operators or producers that broadcast materially deceptive audio or visual media prohibited by the section if the broadcast clearly acknowledges through content or a disclosure in a manner that can be easily heard or read by the average listener or viewer that there are no questions about the authenticity of the material deceptive audio or visual media. So basically, if you say, oh, this is just, you have to like say this is not true, or you have to say this is what they're saying, this isn't what we're saying. So if you are an internet publication, a YouTube channel, anything like that, they're going to come after you more unless you state that it's not true, or that you're not saying this is being said, and you're going to have to risk whether or not they deem that okay, is basically what is happening. But they specifically state in electronic publications, everything in media is up for grabs. Obviously, if you're part of the mainstream media, you're going to have way of a, of an advantage. They have this title which irks the hell out of me. It's called Restoring Integrity to Americans' Elections. Who does that sound? What title does that sound like, right? Remember Tulsi Gabbard's Restoring Our America's Election Securities Act? Well, they took this and made it into something else, saying that they're going to be promoting security, promoting more censorship, and that we need to have basically a committee that oversees our elections. But this committee is going to be appointed by the freaking president. It's going to be appointed by Congress. It's going to be appointed by the Senate specifically. So it's a committee appointed by the people in power. So again, you're not having a committee chosen by the working people of America. You're having a committee chosen by the president and the Senate, who's already going to have their own bias and their own empowerment. But they're trying to say now, because of this committee, that means like our elections are full of integrity and completely just perfect. So that's just the gist of it. Like I said, they purposely 791 pages. So you only get like, oh, gerrymandering, oh, this and that. But once you get down to the specifics, it's actually really, really fucking bad. They're going to amp up censorship. They're going to amp up cybersecurity. They're going to say that this is our elections are safe and secure, but they're not. And if you question it, you're going to get in trouble even more, because now they're saying you are a threat to the public trust in our democracy. It's really, really bad, though bad outweighs the good.
Yeah. A lot of the stuff they want to get in the HEROES Act, they're pushing through right now. Johnny, anything else before we get to some Super Rays? Dolores Lima, thank you so much. Aloha. Keep spreading the truth.
Thanks for bearing with us through that, because I know it's wonky, but I'm trying to.
Motor Love 1984, to the realest of the real. Love you guys, Pasta Fee and Johnny. Always keeping it real and reporting on the truth. Just showing you guys some love. Also, if they really gave a fuck, you would think they would fix the voting machines, voter suppression. Wow. It's all political theater. They just want more fucking control.
Yep.
You are right. Embled Fate. I hope this bill does not have any Russiagate crap in it. Sorry, it already did.
It did. It starts just a few minutes ago. It's literally talks about Russiagate.
Unless the bill makes election fraud harder and voting third party easier, it's worthless, and we don't live in a democracy until those things are possible.
It don't mention anything about.
It doesn't also mention the proprietary software.
Nope.
In fact, it enforces more this practices by the vendors and giving the vendors more power.
The vendors have more
and more
power.
Free way. You know what I'm saying? This is Benny Massimo. Why does the establishment refuse to fully investigate election integrity? Because this is not a democracy. You better believe that.
Our friends are so smart.
Katie May, thank you so much for the Super Ray, Katie May. Mona Love 1984, again, we love you, Mona Love. Also, you know anything called For the People Act is totally not going to be for the people. We know how these corrupt politicians
Nancy
work.
Pelosi's pushing it.
OG North American Ape came over from YouTube. That's what we want you to do. Come over from YouTube to Rokfin. Thank you so much. Folks are going to have to learn how to read through these bills because the establishment is really trying to clickbait them with these flowery headlines and titles. That's what they always do, even the groups, even the three-letter groups, the NGOs like the National Endowment for Democracy. Once you see a high page count, just know There's buffoonery in there. Exactly. We talked about this before. Make these bills
Nobody's
small.
gonna read
Make them
800
shorter.
pages.
Yes, make them so it's easy for people to go through.
Except fam.
Except they do 800 pages. Benny Massimo, again, state legislators have the sole responsibility of elections. That's what they're trying to take away. The federal government's
Right.
trying to get their nose in it. In Pennsylvania and Georgia, Secretary of State changed the rules without a legislative approval. This is unconstitutional. You better believe it. They
Not
did change
anymore.
those rules.
If this passes, it's going to be
yeah.
lawful
Exactly,
for them to do
'cause
it.
now
That's
the
why they
federal
want to pass
government-
it so bad.
Fam, did they really throw in the Russiagate BS? This is from North American 8 OJ, citing the Washington Post as a source.
I know.
Whose firms like the New Knowledge, the firm that
insane.
legit got exposed for creating the Russian fake bots, they literally throwing fake news in the bill.
They are.
And a lot of those memes were produced after the election. That people don't talk about that too as well. And they didn't convince anybody. Even the Bernie Sanders with the Jesus color arms. Jill R. Thank you for the Super Ray. Convo's the best. Thank you very much for the Super Ray. Chino Latino for the Super Renya Queen and Super Reyes. Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Super
Reina.
Renya and Super Reyes. Kings and Queens. That's us. And that is that. Thank you for all the Super Rays. 74 people watching. The next subject real quick we got to get through. Do we have time, Johnny? No. We don't. So we can't do it.
Yeah. Well.
What
Yeah.
last
Do you
time?
want to do it? Maybe this weekend we should do the Arizona. Okay.
Well, both of them are going to be longer than 10 minutes, so.
No, not the Wall Street one. This last one, I put after this one.
Okay, the
All
memes.
right, so yeah, let's just go through that really quick. I just want to point out a couple things. Pelosi's most impactful bill, you guys. Here's Pelosi's most impactful bill. It's really important for all of you. I'm sure you guys can't wait for this one. It's HR 484. Basically called the No Glory for Hate Act. House Democrats introduced a bill to ban twice impeached presidents from burial at Arlington National Cemetery and federal funds from going to the buildings displaying their names or acknowledging their achievements. Okay, so this is what Nancy Pelosi's focused on while not giving you a stimulus. The fact that she doesn't want Donald Trump to be buried at Arlington
So
Cemetery.
stupid.
This is fucking so ridiculous.
So dumb.
Another thing I want to point out is Biden's broken promises. Colin Kalmbacher said, breaking. President Biden just issued a new ICE guidance, wholly abandoning his pledge to halt deportations. ACLU says this is a disappointing step backward from the Biden administration's earlier commitments to fully break from the harmful deportation policies of Trump and Obama. Of course he wasn't going to do that. We told you he wouldn't do that. A lot of the Biden people, or the progressives who voted for Biden, are complaining now. And I haven't said anything, but I really want to smack them outside the head with a mackerel, fam. Steve Poikin in style, because it's like, we told you so. Like, we knew this was going to happen.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, you're finding out the hard way. New boss, same as the old boss, or perhaps worse, because the media isn't going to talk about it. And then Cenk Uygur, can you tell me...
Who, Tubby?
Yeah.
Tubby Uygur.
So, you're such...
Tubby Uygur.
Stop body shaming Cenk. Okay?
No, he's an asshole. He deserves to be body shamed. And this shows why he deserves to be body shamed.
So he said, only upside of... do you want to read it?
Of course, only upside of Texas power outrages is people like Joe Rogan who are so proud to leave California and move to Texas, freezing their ass off. They said they wanted less government. Congrats, mission accomplished. I hope you're not asking the government to come help you. Hashtag freedom.
First of all, Joe Rogan voted for Bernie Sanders in 2016, and I think didn't he vote for Tulsi Gabbard?
No, I think he voted for Bernie Sanders. Actually, in 2020.
Oh, in 2020?
He might have, because I don't know, but it was between those two.
It was between those two.
Yeah.
Like, what? Yes, Joe Rogan is a more libertarian mindset, but, like, what the fuck, Cenk? Like, so you want people to freeze because you don't like Joe Rogan? What kind of bullshit is that? You know, I hate that on all ends, that I've seen that happen, where some of these liberals are like, well, Texans get what they voted for. It's like, you don't want people to fucking... freeze because they don't agree with their ideology.
Dumb.
It's not just stupid, it's inhumane.
Yeah.
And then we just have some memes to close out the show. This one from using Futurama. When Americans ask the government for help, no, it's cheaper if you just have to die. Which is true. It's cheaper if you do die, and you get $7,000 for your funeral. So fake your death.
You get more for your death than you do in your stimulus.
And of course, you know, I've been saying this isn't the time to push freaking Beto O'Rourke. He's a neoliberal, milquetoast neoliberal dumbass.
Come on, Mark Cuban. Run for senator in Texas. Please, Mark Cuban.
It's not a time to forget about Andrew Cuomo. We're going to be talking more about Andrew Cuomo in this coming week because they're trying to impeach him, in other words, right?
They're trying to get the ink on the paper for the recall.
Yeah.
We'll see if that happens.
We'll see if that happens.
You can go online and stuff
He's a
and
piece
sign
of shit.
petitions.
You know, Ted Cruz isn't the only one, but he did use his kid to say that he needed to go to Cancun. So here's this meme. If
Please,
you guys remember,
I have a child.
remember what's his name? The actor.
Who?
This
was Billy Zane.
Billy Zane was, he
I have
picked
a
up
child.
the kid who was a random kid, and he's like, I have a child. He's like, get me on the lifeboat. Well, this is Ted Cruz saying the same thing to go to Cancun, using the same exact excuse. And then this one I think I saw Niko repost it from Populist Uprising, and it's Toy Story. If you're a millennial and you love Toy Story, it's kids in cages, BLM, all cops are bastards, liberals. I don't want to play with you anymore. And they just throw out the old toy for the new one. Johnny knows this one because Johnny loved Toy Story as a kid.
Johnny Toy Story.
And that's how kids are. They have a new shiny toy, they dip you out. And then I just wanted to promote Zagor Brothers' work. They did a wonderful job. They always do a wonderful job, but this was an awesome cartoon. Fam, you asked them to draw us as villains.
Yes,
Are we supposed to be villains?
Well, I said, when we talk about election integrity, when we talk about a lot of the things we talk about over here, when we point out the hypocrisy from the Democratic Party that you like to do all the time, they look at us as villains now, some of the people that we used to be friends with, some of the activists and whatnot, because they don't understand the nuance of policies, especially when it comes to the election thing. I said, sometimes I feel like we're the Thanos and his crew because everybody's coming after us. So here we are, Mad Max style. You can see, look at Johnny with the glasses. He's got the camera right there. He's got that double vested jacket, that Johnny would wear that. He's grabbing onto his jeans with his left hand because he'll do that right now.
The only thing they got inaccurate is me going like this to you.
Going like what?
Like this, putting my hand here. I wouldn't do that. That's the only inaccurate thing that they got.
No, if there were people behind us getting crazy and you get scared, then all of a sudden you'd be all like, pasta?
Yeah, right.
Because obviously,
You'd be
I'm
scared.
the Harrison Ford there. Look. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeet. So
Yeet.
yeah, no. The person that got scared the most was Pasta when we were at the Capitol. He was like, "Fam, Johnny, don't go closer." Fam,
I was scared for Johnny because Johnny's gotten up in the face of some marshals in freaking Portland. And you damn straight I was looking for you with that tear gas and those rubber bullets. I wasn't going to have you getting shot up. Brett McKinney also left a super ray. Thank you so much. Guys, we have 166 endorsees or people who are sponsoring us, whatnot. It is free to sign up, so please go over and sign up for free. But if you got a couple extra bucks and you want to endorse us, we're looking to get to 200 by the end of the month. So today is the 18th, I believe, or is it the 19th? So we have, how many days in February? 10 more days?
Yeah.
10 more days to get 34 more endorsees. So if you can do so, we would love you. Carrie Mark Cruz doesn't have to quarantine for 2 weeks? Question mark.
I don't know. He should.
Well, first of all, we were trying to discuss. He looks kind of like Eddie Munster meets I don't know, that slick back hair or whatnot. So he's kind of cool looking. But anyways, guys, go over to Rokfin. Help us out. We got to get out of here. We have something we have to go cover that's very important. And of course, we'll get all that news and bring it back to you. Johnny's all amped up for this, so we got to get going. Johnny, anything else before we get out of here?
Everyone go follow Zago Brothers.
Oh, show the Zago Brothers.
Zago work.
Yeah,
Instagram is their best account to follow them on because they always post their artwork.
Right there.
It's so good.
We have the Obama one. We have the Fiorella one. We have a Fred Hampton one they did for us. They have some great work. I love that. The one right below us, Johnny, forced to vote, and it's like just dragging the donkey. And that donkey is back on all legs and stuff.
Like Zago Brothers, true artists of our time.
Oh, yeah. Dude, we love their work.
Artwork like that, you know?
Yeah. We have 4 pieces of them now.
Support
They'll be up
them
all over our walls. It's awesome. We'll probably get a 5th one. So
I like this one, too. This is
the Mike Tyson
timeline.
Yep.
But, yeah.
That's all. They have so much great work. Like they even put us up there too as well. Look at the Iran one with the boot on the neck of Iran. That was also a great one too as well. The pink one there, Johnny. Oh God, that one is so awesome. Wow. It shows the boot.
Yeah.
That was like, I mean, seriously.
Wow.
It's like, yeah, we're gonna recognize what happens here, but recognize what happens abroad and look at all the names down: Bolivia, Venezuela, Cuba, Yemen, Libya, Lebanon.
I mean, if I could,
Nigeria,
I would buy
Sudan.
all their art.
Yeah. We're gonna continue to buy more of their art and have it up all over wherever we're at. Keep it real on Rokfin, which gave us a tip, and we say thank you so much for doing so.
Accidental
the people watching
activists.
us. Yes.
I see you in the chat. Shout out to them. We'll have them on soon.
Yes. We'll have them on very, very soon. Go over to Roar Media. Those are our friends. We love them, whatnot. So for Pasta Jardula,
Fiorella.
Johnny Sue, anything else?
Nope.
1s and 2s. Convo out. We'll see you soon.